The cold, biting wind of the Ardennes forest stung like 1,000 needles. Snowflakes, thick and heavy, danced through the air, caught in the glow of the headlights. A convoy of American trucks, their engines rumbling, pushed forward through the swirling mist. The men, worn by days of bitter fighting, could barely keep their eyes open, their breaths fogging in the chill air. Suddenly, the faint sound of distant gunfire cut through the silence, then another and another. Without warning, explosions rocked the earth, sending soldiers diving for cover. The world around them erupted into chaos. The Germans had arrived, and the ambush had begun. It was December 19, 1944, the Battle of the Bulge, one of the largest and bloodiest confrontations in World War II, was entering its second week. Nazi forces, in a desperate bid to split the Allied lines and capture the vital Belgian city of Antwerp, launched a fierce surprise attack through the Ardennes forest. A German push had begun on December 16th, catching the Allied forces by surprise. But this wasn't just any attack, this was a do-or-die offensive for Hitler. With his hopes of a quick victory fading, he saw the Ardennes as his final chance to strike a blow to the Allies. The snow-covered woods and narrow roads were perfect for the Germans to launch their rapid, unexpected assault. The U.S. 101st Airborne Division, known for its resilience and bravery, was stationed around Bastogne, a strategic town at the crossroads of vital supply lines. They were a force to be reckoned with, but they were also underprepared for the overwhelming force of the German push. Over 100,000 men were involved in the German offensive, moving quickly through the fog and snow, their tanks crashing through the underbrush. The Americans, caught in a defensive posture, could only dig in and hold their ground. They were facing not only the crushing weight of the German army, but the unrelenting cold, the thickening fog, and the uncertainty of reinforcements. The ambush outside Bastogne was a culmination of the Germans' desperate push. The 101st had managed to hold the town, but had been surrounded. The Germans aimed to choke off the town's defenders by cutting their supply lines. They had one goal: to capture Bastogne and wipe out the men who stood in their way. But the American soldiers, tired and freezing, refused to give in. They dug trenches, set up makeshift barricades, and prepared for a fight they could not escape. All the while, the rumble of tanks and the clatter of German infantry grew louder, echoing through the thick trees. From the American perspective, the battle was a test of endurance and will. The soldiers had to defend not just their position, but their very survival. A sudden ambush, with artillery shells falling like rain and German troops closing in from all sides, turned what had been a defensive strategy into a deadly race to hold on to their lives. The terrain itself became an enemy. Muddy roads turned to ice. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Men moved cautiously, hearts pounding, knowing that a single misstep could mean certain death. It was a fight of attrition, where the smallest mistake could cost lives. The 101st, already battered from their earlier days of fighting, now had to face a force far larger than their own, with the odds stacked firmly against them. The Germans, for their part, believed they were on the cusp of a decisive victory. Their forces were organized into 3 divisions: the 2nd Panzer, the 116th Panzer Division, and the 26th Volksgrenadier Division. Each was tasked with breaking through the American defenses surrounding Bastogne. The Germans had a clear advantage in numbers and firepower. Their tanks, including the feared Tiger and Panther models, rumbled forward, their cannons roaring. On the ground, infantrymen, hardened by months of fighting, moved through the snow, ready to sweep the Americans aside. They believed their attack would be quick, decisive, and relentless. Bastogne would fall, and with it, the hopes of the American forces in the Ardennes. But they didn't anticipate the determination of the 101st Airborne. As they advanced, they were met not with retreat, but with stiff resistance. The Americans had set up defensive positions in the woods, using the natural terrain to their advantage. The German advance slowed. The Americans fought from the shadows, emerging only to fire their rifles or to launch grenades, retreating quickly into the cover of the trees. Technologically, the Americans were outmatched. The Germans had superior tanks, better artillery, and more advanced weaponry. The American soldiers had only their courage, their training, and their will to fight. They had no choice but to hold on. The battle outside Bastogne turned into a brutal contest of attrition. The Germans expected the Americans to break under the pressure, but the 101st held fast. This unyielding defense became a symbol of Allied resistance. The turning point came when General Anthony McAuliffe, commanding the 101st, received a message from the German forces: surrender or face complete annihilation. McAuliffe's legendary response, "Nuts," encapsulated the defiance of the men under his command. He refused to surrender, and the 101st continued to hold their ground. German attempts to surround and destroy the American defenders faltered. Even as the fighting grew fiercer and the casualties mounted, the defenders of Bastogne refused to yield. The shift in the battle came with the arrival of reinforcements. On December 26th, General George S. Patton's Third Army broke through the German lines and reached Bastogne. The 101st Airborne, despite suffering terrible losses, had held out for 10 days, waiting for the relief that would come just in time. The Germans, faced with the combined might of the American defenders and the fresh forces of Patton's army, began to retreat. In the aftermath, the cost of the battle was staggering. The 101st Airborne Division, though victorious, had suffered over 18,000 casualties. The German forces, having failed to capture Bastogne, were forced to pull back. The Battle of the Bulge, which had started with such overwhelming German success, turned into a disastrous defeat for Hitler. The Allies, though battered, had successfully turned the tide, but the battle had been costly. It was a brutal reminder of the high price of victory in war. The Battle of Bastogne remains a testament to the endurance and bravery of soldiers caught in the hell of war. The ambush they couldn't stop became a defining moment in the fight for Europe's future. It showed that even in the most desperate of situations, when all seemed lost, courage and determination could turn the tide. It was a lesson in the human spirit. The men of Bastogne, though exhausted and frozen, proved that resilience could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. It was a reminder to the world that sometimes holding your ground against all expectations is the most powerful act of defiance.